Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. And today we're talking about Saquon Barkley. Haven't spoken about him in a couple of weeks here, but we want to talk about what happens if Saquon Barkley has a great comeback season in 2022. What does Joe Shane do? Is it worth extending him? What are the consequences? We want to discuss all these different things and the factors that could happen. Kind of the offseason here, some OTAs going on today. Danny Dimes had a nice throw to Wan'Dale Robinson. We'll throw that into the video here so you can take a look. But altogether, really, really impressive little combination. It seems that Wan'Dale's already developed a nice chemistry with Daniel Jones, but this is a Saquon Barkley kind of episode where we want to discuss why he could take this step forward, why it could be a comeback season. Every year seems to be a potential comeback year for Saquon after all the injuries. But I do want to break into, why there's a better chance this year, barring another injury, and what happens monetarily if the Giants are put in a position where they have to make a decision on him. But Anthony, before we dive into Saquon, how you doing today, my friend?
Doing great, and of course, it's been a tumultuous start to Saquon Barkley's career. I mean, a killer, phenomenal rookie season in 2018. 2019, injuries strike. 2020, injuries strike even harder. 2021, they strike once again. It's been tough for Saquon Barkley. I mean, all of the talent in the world. Everybody said this is maybe the greatest running back prospect to ever come out in the NFL draft when he was drafted in 2018. It's why the Giants took him at second overall, whether you agree with that decision, think they should have or shouldn't have. He was the second overall pick because he was the perfect running back prospect. I mean, just phenomenal at Penn State. But then he gets to the NFL, looks like the stud that he was at Penn State in his rookie season. But since then, it just hasn't been the same player. There's been a number of factors that have held him back, from bad play calling to poor offensive line play. And of course, as I mentioned, the injuries. So it's been really tough for Saquon Barkley. But every time we get a new offensive coordinator, an upgrade on the offensive line, we always look at Daniel Jones and say, this is really going to help him, and this is going to help his development, and maybe he can have a breakout. But we also need to start looking at Saquon Barkley as well in a contract year. Brand new offensive lineman in front of him, brand new offensive play caller. It seems like the Giants have really prioritized getting good run blocking offensive linemen too, especially on that right side. So maybe instead of taking all of our attention and putting it on Daniel Jones, we need to take at least some of it, put it on Saquon Barkley and say, hey, everything that the Giants have done thus far in the offseason might lead Saquon Barkley to have a really great bounce back season.
Right. And like I said before, it ultimately comes down to the injuries. And just to give you an overview of what he's gone through the past 3 years, September 22nd, 2019, ankle sprain, grade 2, really, really hurt him. It was in the second quarter against Tampa Bay. And ultimately, like, that injury set the tone for the rest of his 2019 season. He was really hampered by that. Fast forward to September 20th of 2020, knee ACL tear and a knee MCL sprain. That kept him out the entire season. So literally a year after the ankle injury, almost to the day, he suffers that serious knee injury against Chicago in week 2. Then fast forward October 10th, 2021, last year, steps on somebody on Dallas, some cornerback on Dallas's foot. His ankle twists. That really hurts him the rest of the year too. Didn't really look like himself until the very end of the season. And even then, he was still going through a lot of pain. So, this is a guy who has gone through a lot, right? And all of those injuries, by the way, have been to his right leg. So it's not even like they've been spread around. It's his right leg has been an absolute punching bag since he joined the Giants in 2018. And now, you're hoping all those injuries kind of dissipate, they kind of disappear. But the reality is that damage has been done. Those ligaments will never be as strong as they once were. So they're always going to be more prone to injury. And that's kind of like the major argument to make, that even if Saquon has a dominant 2022 season, you can't extend him, because one great season after 3 seasons of injury-prone play is like, now you can't rely on the guy. You just can't rely on him. Last year, he played in 13 games, 593 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns. Again, a lot of that has to do with the offensive line, which I think will be a lot better this season. Evan Neal's a 6'8", 345-pound human being. Running behind him looks pretty easy, extremely physical. Then you have Mark Lewinsky, who is an alpha male power type of guy. He's really aggressive. He can move the line of scrimmage as well. And John Feliciano, your dirt bag kind of guy, and he's also strong. So if you have Saquon running behind those 3 guys, then you have Daniel Bellinger out there, great run blocker, can get to the second level and seal off blocks there as well against linebackers, safeties coming in. That is where you want Saquon to be running. That right side, in my opinion, is where we're going to see Saquon make his money this upcoming season, barring injury, of course. The left side, I trust Andrew Thomas to get out in front. I don't necessarily trust left guard just yet. I do think Josh Azudu is probably the best run blocker out of those three guys, Max Garcia and Shane Lemieux. Maybe not the best pass protector. Maybe Garcia is probably considered the best pass protector at this point, given his experience. But Anthony, do you think the offensive line plays the biggest part in Saquon's potential return, his comeback? Back in 2018, his rookie season, the Giants' offensive line ranked, I think, 16th in run blocking. So that was probably like their best run blocking year compared to the last couple. And this year, we have a really great run blocking offensive line on paper. If they can put it on the football field, do you think that's the catalyst behind Saquon's dominant year if he ends up performing at that level?
I think the top factor is his health. First and foremost, Saquon Barkley needs to find a way to stay healthy this season. If he's able to play and start in all 16 games, I mean, that would be the first time since his rookie season that he was able to accomplish such a thing. So that would be huge for him. And then secondly, yes, the offensive line play is the most important thing. I remember back in 2019, that season when he got injured, he came back later on in the year, and we had a game versus the Jets where I think he finished the game with -1 total rushing yards. And it was just an atrocious performance from the Giants offensive line. I had never seen anything like it. I watched every single snap from Saquon Barkley's 2019 season, every handoff, every rushing attempt that he had. And that Jets game was by far the worst offensive line performance in the run blocking department that I have ever seen a team put on the field. So things like that have kind of stacked up against Saquon Barkley. Moments like that where the offensive line is just historically pitiful. And the play calling in that game as well was really bad. And in many of those games that season, say what you want about Pat Shurmur, and maybe he developed Daniel Jones pretty well in his rookie season. We definitely got the most out of Daniel Jones when he was a rookie. Sure, all those things might be true, but Pat Shurmur's rushing attack was just atrocious. He did not know how to use Saquon Barkley properly, and the Giants made too large of an investment in Saquon Barkley with the second overall pick in 2018 to squander his talents the way that Pat Shurmur did. And ultimately, they moved on and they found someone who might have been even worse in Jason Garrett, unfortunately. But now Brian Dable and Mike Kafka are two proven offensive minds, and they're forward thinking, they're progressive, they know how to get the ball moving downfield in the modern NFL. So I do trust these two to kind of work together and figure out a rushing and receiving attack that works for Saquon Barkley. I think that's a top thing that we need to mention as well. Saquon Barkley needs to stay healthy. He needs the offensive line in front of him to block better so he can find some rushing lanes. But also, the Giants have to get him more involved as a receiver. Just think back to the Saints game this past year. That was by far the Giants' biggest win of the season, their best performance of the season. And Saquon Barkley caught an amazing touchdown pass down the left sideline. And that's something that Alex and I were screaming for the weeks leading up. We were like, dude, put Saquon Barkley out wide. Remember that Texans game in 2019 where he caught that third down conversion or fourth down conversion on the right sideline? He can line up out wide as a wide receiver. He is that good at running routes and catching the football. He is an all-around complete skill set running back. So the Giants need to be able to utilize him in a variety of ways, and they need to be more open to that idea, because just having Saquon Barkley run between the tackles and run behind the center and guard, that's not maximizing his potential or his talents. You need to get him all the way thoroughly involved in the game plan as a rusher and as a receiver. And of course, in order to do that, not only does the offensive line have to do their job, but the play callers have to do their job. And I believe that the play caller that the Giants have now is going to be significantly better than the two that they've had in the past during Saquon Barkley's career.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the ways the Giants can get Saquon more involved is by screen passes, right? Like you look at Patrick Mahomes, look at Josh Allen, and I'm saying those guys specifically because we have Mike Kafka coming from the Chiefs and Brian Dable from Buffalo. They utilize screen passes so much on their offenses, right? That is what I expect the Giants to do. And I tweeted something out this morning, giving people an idea of how different it's probably going to look. Mahomes threw 164 passes last year behind the line of scrimmage. Josh Allen threw 100, and Daniel Jones threw 49. So literally Jones threw a third of the amount that Patrick Mahomes threw and half of what Josh Allen threw. So we can expect them to be stat pad. Get your playmakers with the ball in their hands into space. That is all it takes. You can get an extra 1,000 yards for Daniel Jones just by taking the risk factor out of throwing the ball downfield or whatever it might be. Just hand the ball off to your playmakers, get your blockers out in front, and let them make plays. That is all you have to do sometimes to get those extra stats. And like they can really make Daniel Jones look a lot better just by giving the ball to the guys who make things happen on the football field, Saquon Barkley being one of them. And that leads into the other point. Saquon Barkley had 91 receptions in 2018, his rookie year. The past 3 years combined, he's had 99. So that should give you a pretty clear idea of how little they've utilized him in the receiving game. Of course, the injuries have taken a toll, but rookie season, Pat Shurmur led offense gave Saquon Barkley the chance as a receiver. He had 721 yards as a receiver in his rookie season. He had more yards in his rookie year than he has in the last 3 years combined as a receiver. So that should give you a pretty clear indication of the change in actual offense. I think that, moving forward, we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see a lot more receiving options, receiving opportunities for Saquon, a lot more screen passes for Saquon, splitting him out wide, maybe throwing him into the slot, doing all these different unique things with a player of his magnitude and his skill set. Of course, the injury concern is the biggest one, but I think the creativity is going to blow anything that we've seen over the last 3-4 years out of the water. And that's really like what it comes down to is if you want Saquon to really have a comeback year, you can't just use him as a power gap running back where you're trying to utilize his power. He's not like this power running back. He is a glorified scat back with solid receiving abilities when he's in flow. He's not a power runner. He has power and he's great in the open field and he can shed tackles, but I don't like forcing him to run up the gut and just plow guys ahead for 2 or 3 yards. That's why you have Devontae Bookers of the world. That's not the best way to use Saquon. Get him out on the sweeps, get him out on the outside zone runs, get him outside of the tackles, get your Daniel Bellingers out in front of him and give yourself a chance to open up some gaps. Get Evan Neal to the second level. Maybe you bring in Shane Lemieux as a jumbo tight end in a blocking situation and you just have him lead the way. There are ways to get Saquon Barkley more opportunities in the running game and especially the receiving game, which should help him, get to a glorified comeback year as we've been saying the last couple seasons, really. But Anthony, here's the real question. If Saquon ends up killing this upcoming season, if you're Joe Schoen, what do you do? Because I know what I would do. I know Joe Schoen and where he's coming from in Buffalo. I know what they like to do. But what do you think the perspective is now that he's with the Giants and he has a player like Saquon on the roster?
I mean, if you take a look at what the Buffalo Bills have done in recent years while Joe Schoen was there was not a heavy emphasis placed on the running back position. They are one of those modern, forward-thinking NFL teams, as I mentioned earlier. Brian Dable and Mike Kafka, very modern day and progressive offensive minds. They know how to succeed in the modern NFL. And in the modern NFL, there is a much lower emphasis placed on the running back position. And when you look at those two teams, the Bills and the Chiefs, what have they really invested in the running back position? I mean, I know that the Chiefs recently, they got a first-round pick or second-round pick. I don't remember, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That was pretty high for them. But still, it's a lot of running back by committee with both of these teams. And they really haven't made significant investments into that position. It's been a lot of mid-round picks into that position. And it's been a lot of waiver wire guys. I mean, the Chiefs had LaShawn McCoy starting games at the tail end of his career, right? They really just got the most out of their offense through the passing game. And it's possible that, maybe Brian Dable, Mike Kafka step in here and they look at the talent on the roster and they say, well, we actually are going to utilize the rushing attack way more than we have with our other teams in the past. Or maybe they're going to step in here and say, hey, we're going to rework the Giants offense completely and we're going to have it fall a lot more in line with what the Bills and Chiefs are up to. And that means less rushing, less of an emphasis on that position of running back, and more of an emphasis on creative quarterback play, creative offensive play calling in the passing game, and more talented wide receivers. And I think we've almost seen that already, considering the Giants spent a second-round pick on Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver out of Kentucky. So going forward, it's kind of tough to say what Joe Schoen's going to do with Saquon Barkley. It's very early on. We haven't even seen him take a snap in Brian Dable's offense. So we really got to wait and reevaluate at the end of this upcoming season. But when you take a look at the valuation of the franchise tag coming up, I mean, the 2022 franchise tag value for running backs was $9.57 million. And that's a lot of money. And that's a little bit more than what Saquon Barkley was making on his rookie contract because he got the second overall pick. But when you look at that salary for the running back position, that's pretty steep. And if you take a look at second contracts for running backs, the best running backs in the league, you're talking about Christian McCaffrey making $16 million a year, Alvin Kamara making 15, Ezekiel Elliott making 15, Dalvin Cook making over 12, Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb and Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon all making $12 million or more. And then right up after Joe Mixon is Saquon Barkley making on average nearly $8 million per season. Now, if you want to go ahead and increase that wage by 25% after all of the injuries and unsustainability that Saquon Barkley has had throughout the first 3 years, 4 years of his career, I think you're kind of crazy. I don't think that you can really make that argument and justify giving him a big contract worth 12 to 15 or 16 million dollars. Saquon Barkley just has not lived up to expectations so far. I think if you want to give him the franchise tag, extend him one more season, that's fine. You could potentially do that because you're only increasing his wage by $2 million at that point. But if you're talking about increasing it by $5 to $10 million, I think you're a little bit crazy. And I think that Saquon Barkley has a lot more to prove before he gets a big payday like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think you're looking at Joe Shane, where he's coming from for the Buffalo Bills. They just, they have Devin Singletary, they have Zach Moss. They just spent a mid-round pick on James Cook. I don't think that they're the Giants, and especially Joe Shane coming from that line of thinking, are going to overspend on Saquon Barkley when they can go into next year's draft and say, hey, let's go get ourselves a mid-round pick to pair with Matt Breida, and we'll just run with that. You know what I mean? Like, and then you look at Wan'Dale Robinson. A lot of people think he's an extension of the running game, with his jet sweeps. He can do a lot of things. He was a running back for Nebraska. He's a really solid player, can do a lot for you. That we'll see how his role develops this upcoming season and what he's capable of doing. But I don't think Saquon is going to be this, like, the reason we make it to the Super Bowl or the reason that we don't. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's kind of like, it depends on how they want to allocate the funds, right? Next year, I'll say this. If the Giants decide to move on from Daniel Jones, then maybe spending the money on Saquon for maybe a 2-year extension, you could justify it because they have so much money to spend it because they're going to go the rookie quarterback way. You want them to have a great running back. If they decide to keep Daniel Jones and spend that money, you can pretty much guarantee Saquon is not staying, right? Because there's not a chance they're paying a ton of money to Saquon and Daniel Jones, two players who are still incredibly unproven after the injuries, and Jones is just inconsistencies. So this is a situation where, like, it really, the cards would show that they're 95% going to move on from Saquon after this year based on the logical thinking of the Buffalo, mindset in terms of just mid-round running backs, supplementing that position. You look at the best running attacks in the league, not a lot of them have phenomenal running backs. A lot of them are like mid-round, late-round running backs, but phenomenal offensive lines and schemes, right? 49ers, you can even say Buffalo doesn't have the best running game in the league. Even Green Bay with Aaron Jones, guys, like a 4th-round draft pick, you know what I mean? Like 1st-round running backs, like look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's been replaced by undrafted free agents, like in last season at like, I think Gore, his name was, got reps over him. Damian Williams, there's so many guys who just are capable of playing that position if they understand the scheme and do their job correctly. So we'll see if Saquon Barkley has like this magisterial 2022 season where, like, blows everybody out of the water and he becomes indispensable, then we'll have a conversation about it again. But for now, I think the probability is we will end up moving on from him after this year, guys. But I'd love to hear your thoughts below in the YouTube comment sections. Let us know what you think about Saquon Barkley. If you think he's going to have a comeback year, if you think the Giants should extend him in that case, or what your thoughts are. But just kind of following Joe Shane's train of thought and the logic he has, kind of gained from the Buffalo and Miami systems, I don't think that it's likely. But as always, make sure to like and subscribe below on the YouTube channel, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.